A black girl forced to marriage with a disabled billionaire by her stepmother, was the final, crushing blow for Lena Petrov. She stared at the document detailing the overwhelming debt left by her vanished father, Ivan. Her stepmother, Diana, coldly informed her she was legally liable. At just 23, with no resources, Lena had already sacrificed her education and now lived in a converted closet, completely trapped. But the twist that changed everything was one she never saw coming, a secret he had been keeping from the very first day. Lena Petrov's life had been whittled down to a series of transactions. Her power wasn't in wealth or status, but in a quiet, desperate endurance. She worked long hours at a forgettable service job, her own dreams of higher education sacrificed years ago to the bottomless pit of her father's vices. Her home was a windowless storage closet in her stepmother's apartment, a constant physical reminder of her place in the household hierarchy, an unpaid debtor, a burden. The only thing she cared about was survival, a fragile hope for a morning where a new crisis wasn't waiting. Her key relationships were chains. Her stepmother, Diana, was her warden, holding the legal documents that bound Lena to her father's crushing debts. Her stepsister, Chloe, was a living symbol of everything Lena was not, entitled, cared for, and free from consequence. They were the only family she had left, and they wielded that fact like a weapon. It was Diana, the woman who should have offered some semblance of protection, who presented the cruel solution. Chloe's wealthy fiancé, Marcus Thorne, had been in a severe accident, he'd lost his memory and the use of his legs. Chloe wanted out, but the family needed his money. Diana's offer was a masterpiece of manipulation, cloaked in the language of survival. Lena would impersonate Chloe, marry the vulnerable billionaire, and secure the funds to save them all. The trusted figure who held the key to her prison cell was now leading her into a gilded cage, and Lena, drowning in hopelessness, saw it as her only lifeline. She agreed, pitying the unconscious man in the hospital bed and apologizing for the deception, completely blind to the terrifying truth that she was not the only one in the room playing a part. The confrontation began the moment Lena stepped back into the apartment to collect her things. Diana was waiting, her expression a mask of cold impatience. "The performance begins now," she stated, not a suggestion but a command. "Do not get comfortable in that mansion. You are a tool to secure our future, nothing more." She handed Lena a single, worn suitcase. "Remember, every luxurious moment you enjoy there is bought with the threat of a lawsuit. Do not forget where you belong." The first hard evidence of the true betrayal came not from Diana, but from Chloe. A week into Lena's new life, her stepsister arrived unannounced at the opulent estate, a whirlwind of jealousy and spite. As Marcus wheeled into the room, Chloe's voice cut through the air, sharp and deliberate. "Rita, don't be rude. Introduce us." The use of her real name was a bucket of ice water. Lena's blood ran cold, but she forced a brittle smile. "That's my middle name," she explained to Marcus, her voice trembling only slightly. "Chloe's called me that since we were kids." He accepted it, but the moment was a hairline fracture in her carefully constructed reality. After he left, Chloe leaned in, her whisper a venomous promise. "You're getting too comfortable. Mom wants the wedding soon. The creditors are getting aggressive. Speed this up or everything falls apart." Lena's investigation was a quiet, internal unraveling. That night, she found a formal letter slipped under her bedroom door. It was a new, previously undisclosed debt, for a significant sum, with a 2-week deadline. This was Diana's proof, not just a verbal threat, but a physical, legal document demanding payment. It confirmed that her stepmother had been hiding the full extent of the financial ruin, using Lena as a pawn to clear each layer of debt as it surfaced. Lena began to see the lies not as a single act, but as a web. She started paying closer attention to the household accounts, using the access Marcus had generously given her. She found small, regular withdrawals she couldn't explain, all leading back to accounts controlled by Diana. Every kindness from Marcus, his genuine interest in her opinions, his respect for her space, the way his eyes softened when she read to him, became another piece of damning evidence against her stepfamily. They had sold her a story of shared survival, but the truth was they were selling her to save themselves. The transformation was not a shout, but a chilling, resolute silence. Kneeling on the floor of her lavish bedroom, the demand letter crumpled in her fist, Lena Petrov stopped feeling like a victim. The fear that had been her constant companion solidified into a cold, sharp core of determination. She was no longer just trying to survive their scheme, she would now turn it against them. They thought they controlled a desperate girl, but they had just created an avenger, one who now lived inside the fortress they had so desperately wanted to breach. She would play her part perfectly, but the finale would be of her own design. The trap was sprung not with a shout, but with a quiet, devastating observation. They were in his study, and Lena, weaving another thread into their fictional tapestry, described a detailed conversation they'd supposedly had about potential wedding venues. Marcus listened, his expression unreadable, before setting his glass down with a soft, final click. "I never discussed venues with Chloe," he said, his voice dangerously calm. "We never got that far." The world tilted on its axis. "I know who you are, Lena. I've known since the hospital. Since you sat by my bed and apologized for what you were about to do." A fierce confrontation erupted, a torrent of pent-up guilt and fury. "You knew this whole time?" Lena gasped, shock curdling into anger. "You've been pretending, playing me while I was drowning in guilt." But Marcus didn't flinch. "You don't get to be angry," he stated, his gaze unwavering. "I was lying about my memory. After the accident, I was disoriented, but by the time you visited, I was lucid. I staged it to see what Chloe would do. I wanted to see the character of the woman I was engaged to." He explained his own history with her father, a history of betrayal that mirrored her own. "But then," he continued, his voice softening, "I began to fall for you. The real you. The woman who loves books and treats my staff with kindness. The woman who feels genuine guilt. That's what changed everything." In that moment, Lena saw the path to her stepmother's downfall. She systematically laid out the evidence she had gathered, the hidden debts, the threatening letters, the financial withdrawals. She revealed Diana's entire scheme, not as a desperate plea, but as a formal indictment. Marcus listened, his jaw tightening with each revelation. The final blow came when he offered not just to clear the debts, but to provide his lawyers and financial records to formally sever her from Diana's manipulation forever. The victory was not in his offer, but in her acceptance. As the weight of her lies finally lifted, Lena looked at the man who had seen through every one of them and had chosen to stay. Her final statement was not one of vengeance, but of reclamation. "Then let's start over," she said, her voice steady and clear for the first time. Honestly, this time. It was a declaration that her life, her choices, and her love were now her own. The peace that followed was not merely the absence of chaos, but a profound, tangible safety. With the swift and decisive action of Marcus's legal team, crushing debts tied to Lena's name were erased and ironclad documents were filed, permanently severing Diana's financial leverage. The constant, gnawing fear that had been Lena's shadow for years finally receded, replaced by a quiet certainty. For the first time, space around her was not a gilded cage, but a true sanctuary. In that safety, healing began. Long conversations stretched into the night, not built on invented memories, but on the honest excavation of their pasts. Lena spoke of her father's abandonment and the years of emotional servitude. Marcus shared the scars of his own betrayals in business and the cynicism that had led him to stage his amnesia. They were no longer performer and audience, but two wounded individuals learning the delicate architecture of trust. Lena enrolled in university to finish her degree, her ambition no longer a sacrificed dream but a planned future. Marcus, inspired by her resilience, threw himself into his physical therapy with renewed vigor, his recovery now a shared goal. Months later, under the gentle light of a setting sun in the garden that had become their favorite place, Marcus proposed again. There were no schemes, no audiences, and no desperation. "Marry me for real this time," he said, his voice steady and sure. "Because you choose me, and I choose you." Lena's yes was an immediate, joyful echo, a choice made from a place of wholeness, not lack. Their wedding was small, filled only with those who genuinely cherished them, a stark contrast to the grand, fraudulent spectacle they had once been forced to enact. The powerful lesson was etched into the very fabric of their union, that true love cannot be built on a foundation of deception or desperation. It can only be forged in the fires of truth, and it only begins when you are finally, completely, free to walk away.